Welcome to the Super Fantasy Bros podcast, which is part of the Triple Play Fantasy Network. I am one half the team, as always, Kevin Coleman, and I'm joined on my podcast by my co-host, Jacob Dunn. Jacob, how is it going out there in Bronco Land?
Bronco Land is great after we somehow got that win over the football team. Another team that the Broncos beat that were severely wounded and struggling. So that is just our MO. We just beat teams that are struggling and we lose to teams who have skill. So that's Denver Broncos for you, brother.
That is a Denver Broncos. You're out there. It looks like how do you feel about Vaughn leaving? That's your guy, right?
It was sad, but I was happy for him because I know that the Broncos aren't doing anything this year, and Vaughn still has some years left. And I think that he can still be a game wrecker if he stays healthy. Now he is 32 years old. I thought that the Broncos got a great haul in return, a second-round pick and a third-round pick, whereas I thought a third-round pick would just be a huge win for us. So a second and a third, and to get to rebuild a little bit in the draft is a win-win for both, because I think that Vaughn can help the Rams, and the Broncos' future is somewhat set.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that was a good deal from you. Now you just got to get rid of your coach. Get rid of your coach and draft Justin Fields. Oh shit! Wait, you can't do that again. All right.
Late.
So we're gonna be covering a little bit of recent news. Week 8, and then we're gonna do something a little different today. We wanted to do a kind of a dynasty centric show, and we're gonna be talking about. We took some dynasty questions from the viewers, and just kind of from some of the people that follow us on Twitter and some other social media stuff, and just talk about dynasty. And I'm sure Jake will have some questions as well, and we'll kind of we'll go through it. So let's get started. Here we go. All right, so the big news, and I know everything and their mother's talking about this, but we got to talk about it just for a little bit. Derrick Henry undergoes foot surgery. There's no timetable for his return right now. Who knows where he's going to go? We do know that he's not going to be a potential, fantasy asset right now. So we got to talk about kind of where does that replace with there. So we got McNichols, who is there. You have Darrington Evans is someone I like. I'll talk about him. I've had him for a while, but he just hasn't been able to stay healthy. And then our guy, Adrian Peterson, who, Jacob, I think you're around my same age. We've been watching this guy play football for a very, very long time. He is back. So, overall, what is your opinion? How does this thing shake out? How should we feel? They didn't make any moves at the deadline. No one did. So we know they're not bringing anybody else in. Like, what is your opinion of this backfield?
It is such a mess. First of all, Adrian Peterson is the priority ad, but I don't have high expectations for him, especially next week. I think that it's going to be Jeremy McNichols' backfield, at least the majority of it this week. But as the weeks progress, it's going to be just a timeshare between Jeremy McNichols and AP. And that doesn't sound too appealing to me. So I'm personally not going to rush and spend a bunch of fab on AP or even McNichols. I would rather add McNichols for, I would rather have that running back that's been with the Tennessee Titans all season, all off season, who knows the offense, over an AP who is just coming in and assuming that Derrick Henry role, but we are just assuming that he does that, who knows if he even gets 10 carries a game. So this is definitely a mess, and everyone who is wondering, Darrington Evans is out for the remainder of the season. He was placed on IR last Friday. So it's just McNichols and AP, which doesn't sound great. So I'm not spending up personally on either one. But McNichols is the guy in the short term. Now, I'm curious, Kevin, do you have similar thoughts, or are you all in on AP?
Oh, I'm not all in on AP. No, that is not a statement that you'll ever hear me make. Like, I think AP, like, realistically, if we're being honest here, 50 yards and you hope he scores a touchdown.
Sure.
Right. I think that's kind of what you have there. I think McNichols plays a role. Like, I'm a Derrick Henry owner in a dynasty league of where I was competing. I have him, Aaron Jones, and Barkley as my running backs, and I'm still competing. It's just, and McNichols is out there, and so is Peterson. I'm going after McNichols in my league there, just because I do think that he's going to get the short term. Hey, can he be that guy? I'm going to go after them, and I get that. I know they added Foreman, excuse me. Okay. He's still out there, But I still think in PPR, McNichols is probably the ad to have. I would assume like that's the guy that I'm going to take after. And if that's the case, that's the case. I'm just going to go there. I do think this helps out Julio and AJ Brown, and I think that they're going to throw. I think and I'm happy because I got AJ Brown everywhere. So I think that they are going to throw a little bit more. We'll talk about Tannehill a little bit in Dynasty. But, for me, perspective-wise, I think McNichols is a fair ad. I don't mind Peterson if it's, if it's doable, if it's realistic. Okay, I do agree with that. So, my mindset is like, hey, you take a shot at McNichols. You hope that they have there. But I'm not expecting a lot from these guys. It's basically if you have an injury, you can plug and play. And can they get you 10 PPR points? And I think that you'd be happy with that. I mean, I had to start some bad starts last week with my running backs. Some of my running backs are just decimated. So if you got to pick up some running backs to fill your 2 running back requirement, then McNichols would be the kind of guy I would lean towards.
Love it. I agree.
All right. Yeah. So like we said, there's no trade deadline moves right now. There was OBJ's dad got mad. He didn't get moved. You had some other stuff going on. We didn't see Melvin Gordon. Were you shocked that Melvin Gordon didn't get traded?
I was a little bit shocked. Just because a bunch of teams could use that veteran RB. And I thought, since the Broncos traded Von Miller, why not just trade Melvin Gordon on the last year of his contract, a 28-year-old who's not a part of our future plans, and let Javonte Williams finally take over this backfield. That was the hope and the dream, and it made sense. But now that Melvin's staying, it's a bit of a letdown. And I'm sure it's a letdown for all of you Melvin fantasy managers who were hoping that he would go to the Titans and just assume that 3-down role. I think it's a bummer all the way around that he stayed here in Denver.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. Right? Javonte stands are very upset right now because I think that he would have had a good second half of that year. Yes. I'm surprised they didn't. I'm surprised. And I think we don't have a question about this later. Melvin Gordon's dynasty value is pretty low already, but I think he's going to find a spot. Like, I think that wherever he goes, I mean, he could be there. And they could add some pieces there. I think he'll hurt someone's value somewhere he goes. Obviously, he's not going to stay in Denver. But, I thought it was interesting that he didn't move. Like, I really was. I thought it was there. So, let's go through some winners and losers real quick of Week 8. And we're going to just kind of look and go through it and talk about some guys. So, why don't we start with you, Jacob?
All right. I got to start off with a loser this week. And unfortunately, his name is Deandre Swift. My goodness, man. He finished as the RB 36 with 8.1 fantasy points in PPR leagues, which is good for a very bottom barrel, low end RB3. But Jamal Williams was a late scratch, and everyone and their mom assumed that Deandre Swift was going to just carry the entire load and have an RB1 day. And it was like a set and forget. He's going to be an RB1 with all of his touches against the Philadelphia Eagles. All right. But he turned 17 touches into just 51 yards and even lost a fumble to boot. All right. Yeah. So for a guy that we have been touting as a quarterback proof RB1, RB2 each week, this was incredibly concerning, but lucky for Swift and the Detroit Lions, they're on a bye week this week. So hopefully head coach Dan Campbell can manufacture some touches or just think of some more creative ways to get Swift the ball in space, because he didn't have any space to move. Every time he got the ball, it was either a 1-yard gain, a no-yard gain, or a 1-yard loss. And it looked like complete garbage. So let's hope the Lions take this bye week just to get Swift right.
Yeah, I think there's a combination of things. Goff is terrible. So let's all be clear out there. Goff is bad. Williams not playing. I think he plays a role. Like, I think that Swift was using a lot of different ways than he has this season. He was using a lot of short yardage situations, but he was also just pounding up the middle. That's really not Swift's game. All of a sudden, they need to get him more to the outside. I do think there was some game script problems there. I don't know if they thought Williams maybe was going to play a little earlier or whatever the case may be, and it just definitely didn't get out of the right start. I will say it sucks. Like, as a Swift guy, it definitely hurt me in some leagues. I put up some really bad scores this week in a couple of leagues that had Swifts, because it was just, hey, it is what it is. But I do still think in his value. I think he's still very valuable. I do think that he has that potential there. So I like that. So for me, Swift's there. We still buying into him. He's still a top 12 guy. He'll be all right. and we're going to go there. So, all right, well, let's go to mine. One of my winners is Justin Fields. So, for me, Justin Fields has been up and down, as we know. We've seen it happen. But hey, here's the thing. Here's some advice for everybody out there. If Matt Nagy is not calling plays, is not on the sideline, you start Justin Fields. That's just how just how it has to work. I love the quote from Nagy saying, "Oh, we got to figure out how to play like we did last week, and what was the difference? It was you, bro. You weren't on the sideline." But I liked what he did last week. 26 fantasy points. He had 103 yards rushing. That's his. If he can. You saw what they were able to do. Get him on the outside run, make those decisions, and increase things with your legs. He can do that. And he had that touchdown, that great touchdown run. He also had 175 yards passing and a touchdown. He did throw an interception, but he looked a lot better this week. And so I'm just going to give him a shout out as like, hey, he looked good. I don't know how many people had to actually started him, but he looked good.
Yeah, go figure. You get Justin Fields out in space, rolling out. He's going to make plays either with his arm or his legs. More often than not in his rookie year, it's going to be with his legs. So yes, Coach Matt Nagy, the problem is you, bro. Oh my goodness. Actually cater your offense to your first round pick that you stole from the Denver Broncos, who willingly gave you Justin Fields on a silver platter, yet you're not using him the right way. And now it takes a different coach with a mindset of, you know what? I'm going to use Justin Fields' strengths. And they did. And look what it turned into. 26 fantasy points, over 100 yards rushing, which is his specialty. I mean, he is mobile and he has an arm. Just wait until he gets that chemistry with Darnell Mooney and A-Rob. I think that he can be close to a league winner. Now, I want to see this happen again before I fully trust him. But this is a very promising sign for redraft leagues who have Justin Fields and dynasty managers who have him.
Yeah, no, I think it is, right? Like, and I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see him grow. And he was one of the reasons why he was one of my biggest buys recently in a Fantasy Pros article that I did like 2 weeks ago. I was like, hey, now's the time. Go get him. Like, go get him now and attack. And I think some people did. So I was a big fan of that. All right, who's another guy that you have on here? Or guys, my bad.
Yes, it's guys. So I lumped these guys together because I was impressed by them. And that's Amari Cooper and CD Lamb. All right, both Cowboys wide receivers finished inside the top 20 this week without Dak Prescott. All right, that's a testament to Cooper and Lamb, but also props to Cooper Rush for holding down the fort for our Cowboy wideouts, Kevin. All right, Cooper finished as the wide receiver 5 this week, and Lamb finished as the wide receiver 17. And Kevin, I'm not sure if you heard, but CD Lamb tried to talk Amari Cooper into letting him score that game-winning touchdown at the end.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Like Lamb obviously couldn't change Amari's mind as Cooper Rush found Amari Cooper on a gorgeous throw to win the game in the back of the end zone. I mean, that was a thing of beauty. I was like, who just threw the ball? Cooper Rush? Like, that was an insanely good throw. But also the Vikings botched that game, but the Cowboys went on the road without Dak Prescott and stole that win. Kevin, this just seems like a season of destiny for your Cowboys. What do you think?
I have a buddy, and he's one of my best friends that we work together, and his name is Tony, and he listens to our pod. He's a good guy. I like him a lot, and it's funny, we're both Dallas fans, and we both cry all the time because we say, hey, it's always something. Injuries. It's always something. Drop balls. It's always something to catch. It does seem like this year we're kind of the team of destiny. And I say that very loosely because the NFC is stacked. But you know what? These things usually don't go the Cowboys' way, right? Like they don't. And they look great. And I wish that CD would have been able to talk Cooper into it because I needed him for my fantasy team. But I would say, like, as far as the game, I loved it. I love every second of it. I actually lost the matchup because the guy had Cooper. But it doesn't matter to me because we won. And to me, it's all about my NFL team. But that was a lot of fun there. And I think Cooper can do those things. I just think that he disappears for fantasy perspective sometimes, and it's like that.
Yeah. If you don't think that the Rams didn't trade for Von Miller in hopes to slow down the Cowboys offense, then you are fooling yourself. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm a big fan of that, and I think hey, Cedric Wilson too. I've talked about him here before,
Yeah.
and I've said, like I know Gallup's coming back soon. He's gonna have a role though, because he's good, and I think that he's gonna get that feel. He's gonna get those targets. So, big fan of that. Now, what I'll do is, you know what, I'm gonna talk about Michael Carter, and he's gonna be on one of my articles this week for Fantasy Pros, and I'm saying sell the shit out of Michael Carter. So he had a great game. And so don't get me wrong there, against a pretty good defense and what we think of a pretty good defense with Cincinnati. Of course, Cincinnati lost to the Jets. That's just the only Cincinnati thing to do there. But when you're looking at what he did on the field and what he was able to do with Mike White, a quarterback, he had 77 yards, a touchdown. He had 95 yards receiving. He had 32 fantasy points. And in the previous week, because of his targets he got in there against New England, he had 16 fantasy points. So Michael Carter's not been playing terrible. And I think based on where you drafted him, he should be okay. Pretty happy with what he did. Now, I'm still, though, I think he's okay. I don't think that he's I don't know if he's a real dynasty asset to have. I think he's a running back 3 with running back 2 upside sometimes, depending on the game script in there. So if you can maybe get something more for him now based on what he's doing, to me, he's a sell. But I do want to say good job to Michael Carter being who he is and basically having a great week, and especially if some dynasty owners out there started him. But I still think that he's a sell.
Yeah, everybody listen who has him in Dynasty. Sell him. Take Kevin's advice and sell him and get that coin. All right, and in redraft, I would say sell as well, because Michael Carter's only getting all this run and all these targets because of Mike White. And Zach Wilson is aiming towards week 10, which is in 2 weeks. So once Zach Wilson comes back, there might not be that many targets for a Michael Carter. Now, perhaps they cater the offense around that and say, hey, this is working. Zach Wilson, stop making those dumb mistakes and just start dumping it off and let Michael Carter do his thing. Now, that is the hope, but you need to cash in on that huge week in redraft and dynasty. So sell Michael Carter now and get that coin.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's and what's funny is I looked it up in the recent deals for Michael Carter. Someone traded Michael Carter straight up for Justin Fields last month, so October 20th.
And
so
this
2 weeks in a Superflex league.
In a Superflex dynasty, okay.
Yeah. So if that was the price of Justin
Wow.
Fields, if you could have got Justin Fields for that, again, that's why a couple weeks ago I said, hey, there's an opportunity out there. Now it's not. It's closed. It goes quick, and so you gotta hop on those things.
If you were the one who traded Michael Carter for Justin Fields, we want to personally invite you on this show and ask you how you did it, because that is crazy.
That's incredible. All right. So the last, however long this takes, what we wanted to do is go through some dynasty questions. And, I play a lot of dynasty out there, and I do have a lot of questions there. I know Jacob plays dynasty too, so we're going to get into him. And we'll talk about these questions that we have from people. So let's get into dynasty questions.
Let's do it, man. Let's jump over to it.
All right. Go ahead. You're leading the show.
Let's go. The first dynasty question for you here, Kevin, is Ryan Tannehill a big downgrade without having the threat of Derrick Henry in the backfield?
Yeah, so Ryan Tannehill's a guy that, when we're looking at what Tannehill is, and until a couple of weeks ago, people were really worried about him in terms of fantasy perspective and how he did. I even said he could go down as one of the biggest kind of value busts that we've seen. And just because of he wasn't playing well. You saw what he had. He had the interceptions, and he only had one game that he scored more than 20 points, and that was week 3 up until week 7. So in week 7, we saw him have 20 fantasy points, and in week 8, we saw him have 23 last week. He did throw 2 interceptions. He's thrown 7 interceptions already, only has 10 touchdowns on through the air.
Right.
But I think that this doesn't hurt him. Now, I know that having Henry back there changes things, but this is going to change game script. So if we're thinking as a quarterback, this is going to hurt him a little bit, just because I think that he's going to be the threat of Henry is not going to be there. You're not going to see as many guys in the box. That means he's got to open up. But I do think it will help him, because I think it's going to open up the offense. I think they're going to have to get creative and use the receivers in different ways. I think they're going to use McNichols in different ways and through the receiving game. So I actually think they're going to. I think he's a low end QB1 now, right?
I couldn't agree more, Kevin. This is going to sound weird, but I see the absence of a Derrick Henry as a huge upgrade for Tannehill. Yeah. So I agree with you. The Titans are no longer a running team. All right. They can't be. All right. You can't be a running team with a 36-year-old AP and a Jeremy McNichols. All right. This will be a pass happy team, which benefits Tannehill. And like you said, AJ Brown and Julio, big time. All right. If Tannehill is floating on any of your wires, I would snatch him up in a hurry, because I agree with you, Kevin. Tannehill is a quarterback one the rest of the way. So Tannehill is getting powered up for the rest of the season.
No. I agree. I think that I like that area, and usually, when we talk about this, like, I just think from a fantasy perspective, he's going to score 20 points, right? Like,
Yes.
I think that's his floor.
Yes.
And with his floor where it's at, the QB market where it's at, hey, whatever, I'll take 20 points. He scores a touchdown, and I think he can get some rushing touchdowns. He's already scored 3 this year. So now you're going to see that rushing upside go up. I don't think it hurts Tannehill's value at all. I think it actually helps it. And I think that we're going to see an upgrade of his value that if you have to, you could get rid of him later in the season.
100%, Kevin. All right, next question. Assuming you have both on your team, would you trade Darrell Henderson or Cam Akers, or would you hold on to both and see what happens next year?
Yeah, so this is a tough one. So when I'm looking at this, like, I liked Henderson coming out, and I still like Henderson coming out. So to me, I think you have to hold. Now, if you're a contender and you feel like you're a step away and you can do it and you can move Akers, I think you could try to move Akers. I think the problem is like, what are you getting back for him in terms of that? Can you do it? So what I did for this, I looked and I looked at the rosters and what they have. So again, if you have both on your roster, depending on where you are at, if you're not contending, here's what Henderson is going for right now recently. So you could get Chris Carson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Terrace Marshall for Henderson. Depends on what you think of CH. I wouldn't do this deal because I don't think CH is that good. I think Carson is overrated, and he's always injured. And then Marshall I don't know what's going on in Carolina. So there's that. Darrell Henderson also went for a first and a second next year. I wouldn't, if I'm rebuilding and you can get a first for Darrell Henderson, that's my base. You have to get a first, though. Like, if you're going to move Darrell Henderson, I want a first, preferably early first, if you're trying to find a running back.
See, I was going to preface that. What if it's like a contending team who wants to sell their first and second? So it's going to be like a later pick and then a later pick in the second round. Would you do that or try to hold out hope for like an earlier first?
I would hold out and try to get it earlier first. I don't see that. And when you think of it, like, Henderson's value is only going to go up, in my opinion, based on how he's playing and everything. There's really no change there in terms of, like, unless he gets injured. But as far as that, I can't predict injuries. But just to put it in perspective, like 2 weeks ago, his value was basically he got traded straight up from Michael Gallup.
Whoa.
Laviska Shenault, and seconds. So we've fast forward 2 weeks. Now he's already worth a first. So in my opinion, if you can get a first, that's clearly a top 6 first. If you think that is in there, maybe there's a contender with multiple firsts and they're looking for assets, maybe. But I wouldn't sell for anything under a first if you can. If you can hold him, that's fine, because I think he still provides value over the summer because people don't know what's going to happen with Akers. And so his value is going to hold based on Akers' injury. No one knows what Akers' injury is going to, and if they try to tell you they know, they're full of crap. They don't know what that injury is going to look like. But Akers is a tough one. Okay. Do you have any Akers on your teams?
I do. I have one on my rebuilding dynasty team that I was forced to rebuild because I have Deshaun Watson and then
that's right.
And then Cam Akers. So I have been approached to try to pry Cam Akers away from me. But what I'm getting is like a second round pick in 2024. It's like these picks that won't help me when I assume that when Watson comes back and Akers comes back next year, I'm going to compete. So I'm being offered this garbage now. And it's like, I'm not getting the value that I think that Akers is worth right now. Why would I settle when I know that I can compete next year?
Yeah. No, I agree. And that's how I feel about this question. Like, I think that you hold on to both and see what happens, in my opinion. I mean, assuming, where you're at as a team, if you get a first, like when I was going through Akers trade value, you know what? If you could get a first for Akers, I feel like you have to do it. And people are still giving up first for Akers. So, like, There are people out there. I don't know about your leagues. My leagues definitely are. I play in some pretty competitive leagues. They're not giving up a first, but I
Right.
saw a 2023 first go for Akers. If you can get
I
a
would
2023 first, do it.
I would do that as well, just because you, Kevin, have been saying that the class of 2023 is strong.
Yeah.
So if I could somehow pull that off, I would definitely do that.
Yeah, and if you can do that, then you're good. But other deals I've seen him go for, like David Montgomery. I don't want David Montgomery for Akers. I like David Montgomery, but I feel like that's a lateral move. If I'm going to
Sure.
make a lateral move, I don't want to go there. And a recent one that just happened is Trey Sermon and a 2022 first.
Okay.
You're getting Sermon. I know he hasn't looked. I don't know what's going on, but you're getting a first. You get an asset plus a
Right.
first. Depending on where your roster's at, I don't hate it. I don't hate that move there. And personally, from my experience, what I'm doing right now is I am competing for the 6th place in the league. I lost Akers Dobbins in. I'm still trying to make the playoffs because I like to compete. I hate losing. And so I'm trying to get in there. But for me, Akers is not worth it for me. If I'm borderline, I'm going to keep him and hold him, hope that value improves. And so I think both of these guys, unless you're really, really out of it and you can get a first for Henderson or you can get a first for Akers, I think you got to hold.
Yeah, and I've been hearing that head coach Sean McVay has said that Cam Akers could come back for the playoffs, which is absolutely insane. I don't believe it.
I don't think that.
But just to know that he is progressing in his rehab that much, and Cam Akers has been very public with his rehab videos on Instagram and stuff like that. Like, he looks good. He is rehabbing. He is working his tail off, and he's only 22 years old. Like, he's going to come back next year. Now, I don't know to what capacity, but his value isn't dead. All right. He is worth a first. And what Kevin has been saying, he has been going for some first round picks. Okay. His value is at least a first. All right. And if you can get a 2023 first, that's what Kevin would say to settle with, because that's a very strong class. If it's a 2022 first, then maybe have an extra pick next to that. Is that right, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, if you can get that or some type of asset with him, and I'm solid with that. As far as the running backs go next year, Kenneth Walker, Breece Hall, Isaiah Spiller are probably going to be your top 3. You have Kyron Williams in there. But after the top 2, in my opinion, it gets kind of like, I don't know necessarily it's going to be based on draft capital in there. Like, again, if you're trading for first right now, they don't have a ton of value just because people are going for it. But you can still it's weird. You could still probably make some moves and try to grab them. And so, to me, unless you can do it, unless you can get that first that you really think is valuable in the top 6, and I'm going to hold.
Right on. I agree. All right. So let's move on to the next question. How do we feel about Calvin Ridley in a dynasty league? Now, I wanted to just preface this, Kevin, really quick. Prayers up for Calvin Ridley. Like, mental health is nothing to mess around with. And what's crazy is that Calvin Ridley is on the last year of his deal. Like, he's working towards a mega deal next year. So to do this in a season with so much stake at hand for his future and his future finances, that just means that he needs this. Like, the man, Calvin, needs to take a break. He needs to step aside. So I just want to say prayers are for Calvin. And we really hope that he gets back on the field sooner than not, but take care of yourself first.
Yeah, no, you're 100% correct there in terms of just like, I tweeted this out recently, and when I heard the news, I'm old now though, so like I look at perspectives a little different like this. I think when I was younger, I'd be mad, right? Like, what the hell are you talking about? And me and Jacob, we grew up a different time. I was told suck it up a lot. I was told, hey, like, I didn't have, we didn't have those outlets like these guys do, and so, when I teach kids and I also coach kids, I do both, and I will say athletes, they struggle with mental health in different ways. I will say they have a lot of pressure put on them. NFL to high school. I coach and teach high school, and I see it. And it hurts me to see it. These kids, like, they put a lot of pressure on themselves at school, relationships, friends, sports. And then the one thing I said is, I got asked by somebody about Calvin after I said, hey, I see it. they tend to hide it, and then it's too late, and then they really have some issues. The thing about athletes, and as I played sports and I did the same thing, when I was going through rough patches, sports to me was an outlet. So like when I was going through that, and I used sports to try to like uplift me, but the problem is like when you do that and you don't perform, then it's even worse. And you get, and then that one thing that you had feels like it's been taken away from you. And I think that's what's going on with Calvin, is where he hasn't been playing great. We've seen that. Whatever is going on in his personal life, that's his personal life. But he doesn't have that outlet anymore. He hasn't been really playing. Now, maybe he's not playing well because it is bad, and he's got to take care of it, which he needs to do. And I hope he gets the help for. But I feel bad for these guys. You know, they're young kids. And even if they're like Calvin. Calvin's still young, 26, 27-year-old kid, young man. And then you have like the high school kids that I coach, and I see it, and it tears them apart. And I see that problems with it. So, you know, for me personally, I just hope that he has that. As far as a Dynasty perspective, you know, it's hard. This one's hard. I was thinking about it because it can be very challenging to talk about when he's going through this. But he's not retired. Like he hasn't said he's going to retire. He hasn't said that. I mean, sure, Andrew Luck did it, and we saw that, and we've seen this in the past. I don't think he will. I think that he has that value where you're like, hey, he's not going to retire. I don't think you move him if you have him. I have Calvin Ridley all over in Dynasty. I have him in a lot of my Dynasty teams. But right now, based on where he's going for, I don't think you can move him. Like I've seen like recent trades, Jamison Crowder in a second.
Ugh.
That's disgusting.
Yeah.
Like that's to me, like that's just not fair for that area. Like you hold on to him. I saw Tyler Boyd in a second.
Still yuck.
You can't do that for Calvin Ridley right now. You're not selling him. I think that if you want to buy, if you want to go out there and you believe in his talent and you feel like, hey, he can be that guy for you, I think he can. But you might not be getting back this season. So that's one of those things we're just gonna have to hold. But to me, I'm holding him if I own him, and if I want to go grab him, and I think, hey, I believe in his talent, he'll be back. If I can give up Jamison Crowder in a second for freaking Calvin Ridley, I'll do it.
Yeah, 100%. Like I am in a rebuild myself. Perhaps I will float an offer, or I will talk to the guy, just because like I don't want to float an offer that is going to upset the person, because perhaps that person who has Calvin Ridley, is like, no, I'm going to hold on to him. He is still a wide receiver 1. I am going to wait it out. And if I were to offer Jamison Crowder in a second in a normal league, it would get shot down, and he would send me a DM being like, what are you doing? Like, do you think that little of me? Like, like I would definitely engage with that person and see what his thoughts are. Now, that's just me. Like, like I would be willing to sell like one of my competing wideouts that's like a wide receiver 3-4 and like a second round pick or something like that for Calvin, like to see if that's, but that person who has Calvin probably will accept a lesser deal if it helps them and they are in a competing mode. I wouldn't even try if it's like one of the last place teams and they aren't even competing, because it's like, well, I'm not competing anyway. I can afford to wait. Right. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely a tricky situation, but if you're trying to sell Calvin Ridley, don't expect a huge haul back, because you're only selling him in the first place because you're worried yourself, and like everyone's a little bit worried, like Kevin has confidence that he'll come back, like that's exactly what my gut says too. But sometimes players do pull an Andrew Luck, a Patrick Willis, a Justin Smith, and like they just retire in their prime. It happens. You never know. So that's all I have to say about it, whether you want to get Calvin Ridley or whether you want to sell.
Yeah, and I think, and just prayers up to him. I think that he'll be all right. He'll get his mentals figured out, and hopefully come back and just play the game, and probably a game that he's grown up on. So, yeah, but other than that, the prices just aren't there to sell.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so let's jump to our next question here. Should quarterback always be the 101 in a super flex one quarterback rookie draft? Okay, so should quarterbacks always be the 101 in a super flex and or a one quarterback rookie draft? in the past, that is a rule I would go by, but this upcoming class, I am unsure if I would want to go with a quarterback and rather take a chance on some of the quarterbacks that may fall later. So, Kevin, it's always like an understood, like you should take a quarterback if it's a super flex league, right? But this quarterback class I've been hearing is complete garbage. So can you shed some light and educate us on what we should be doing in our rookie drafts in super flex leagues?
So, okay. So first, I want to preface this by saying like the class is not garbage. So
That was mean.
I know that people are saying it is. No, it's fair because people are saying that it
Yeah.
is. And I will say that there's a lot more question marks, and there's a lot of question marks in terms of like where are they going, right? And we're talking about like right now, I guess Malik Willis might be up there for some people. He's not my quarterback one. Sam Howell might be up there for people. Matt Corral is there for people like myself. I like Matt Corral a lot, but it does get kind of iffy. Like, Kenny Pickett is moving up on some board. Carson Strong, even Desmond Ritter is getting a little bit of noise. Like it's going to be interesting to see where these guys get drafted.
Yeah.
So while I don't know, this is a hard question for me because it really comes down to how you build your roster. And if you need a quarterback, and I was going through the team, so I wanted to do this with you,
Okay.
and I should have done a little pregame work, but I'm lazy. So when I was looking at the teams,
Yeah. Right.
if we look at all the 32 teams, so the Cardinals, they don't need a quarterback, we know that. Baltimore's good. Atlanta, are they going to need a quarterback next year?
Maybe.
Matt Ryan's still under contract, so and I think it's a ton of dead money. Like almost like 23 million or whatever the contract is there. So maybe. So let's just say let's say maybe, right?
Yeah.
Carolina.
Oh, probably if they don't get Watson, right?
I think, maybe, right? Depending on how this season goes out with Darnold.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We know Buffalo and Cincinnati don't need it. Cleveland, are they going to get a new quarterback with this contract thing with Baker? You think they're going to sign Baker and they're good?
I think they will. He's a gamer.
Okay.
And they love him out there. So nah.
So Chicago's good. Dallas is good. Right. Denver needs a quarterback.
Yes, they do. 100%.
Okay. Detroit 100% needs a quarterback.
Yep.
So that's what 1, 2 now. I'm relying on you to count. Let's say 4. Remember that number, Jacob. 4. Right, Houston needs a quarterback.
Yes.
That's 5. Okay. Then you could keep going down. Is Green Bay going to need a quarterback? Is Aaron Rodgers going to leave?
No. I think that the Packers like Jordan Love as their future.
Okay, so then maybe they don't need a quarterback, but they're going to move on. So that means Aaron Rodgers is going to go somewhere. So then Indianapolis, does Indianapolis take a shot? Wentz is playing a little bit better. Do they need a quarterback?
That's dicey. They might take one later, but probably not.
Minnesota needs a quarterback next year.
Yes, they do.
New Orleans might need a quarterback next year.
I think so. 8.
Do the Raiders need a quarterback, or do they are content with Carr?
Man, I don't think they're content with Carr. I think they will take a shot on someone.
Okay, the Giants.
They need a quarterback. Sorry, Danny Dimes.
The Eagles.
Oh man, that is so tough, but probably, right?
Probably, maybe. Miami too. Let's hit maybe Tua. So now we're getting into this. San Francisco probably not. New England probably not. Seattle might be in. If Russell decides to leave, then we're looking at this. The Jets. God knows what's going on right now with the Jets. Who knows what's happening there? So Tampa. Is Brady going to retire, or is he coming back another year? Pittsburgh needs a quarterback. Washington needs a quarterback. And then you have Tannehill. So when you look at the landscape of the quarterback situation, there's going to be a ton of movement across the board.
That's at least half the league is either a maybe or absolutely.
It's around 12, right? 12 or 13 teams, and you're going to see some guys move. So realistically, you're looking at Darnold, Jared Goff, and I even heard Trubisky might get another shot.
Wow.
So when you're talking about those guys getting moved and you have your rookie quarterbacks here, I think based on the positional need, I think that you're probably going to have to take a quarterback at the 101, depending on what your roster looks like and that type of issues. Now, I will say this, is that in the next year's class, to me, I don't think there's a clear-cut 101 of this class. I think it kind of depends. Like when you're looking at like Spiller Hall, if you need a running back. Wide receivers, I love Burks and Wilson, but those aren't 101 guys to me. Like, they're going to transform my dynasty team. There's not a tight end out there that's like, wow, it's there. I think based on need and positional need, you're probably going to have to draft a quarterback. But I don't hate it. Like, I don't actually go in with that rule of drafting a quarterback. In one quarterback leagues, no, I don't draft one. I don't draft a quarterback in one quarterback leagues. But in a super flex, I tend to always lean there because the value, just listen to all those teams we mentioned. No matter what, the value is going to be there. No matter what, Zach Wilson's value is still going to go up. I know he's not playing well right now, but based on what you just heard, there's not enough quarterbacks to fill these teams. So a quarterback's value goes up. How many running backs have we seen their value just decimate this season already? Like, look at all these guys. Even David Montgomery, poor guy got hurt, and now they're talking about Khalil Herbert being the next GOAT, right? Like, then his value, boom, done. You still hear like, oh, well, Wilson's going to start in 2 weeks. There's a reason because quarterbacks are important, okay? And forever nice story of Taylor Heineke there. Let's be real. They're not NFL starting caliber quarterbacks week to week. Like, that's a whole different thing. So I feel like you always got to do quarterbacks in super flex leagues because they hold their value.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
So that was a long answer, but I wanted to go through the teams because I thought it's an interesting kind of way to work it.
It was a good one, man. All right, so let's jump to our next question here. All right, so how are you valuing Mike Williams in trades, knowing that the Chargers likely won't extend him, but also his rest of season value is higher than his market value currently?
Yeah, Mike Williams is a tough one, and we've been mentioning him ever. Everybody says to sell high, but nobody's buying high. And I think that's a problem. I think we've seen some problems with Herbert. And so I do have seen that. He's been like I believe he was the 31st worst quarterback right now, DVOA for the last 2 weeks. So he has not looked good. And I think that's kind of affected Mike Williams.
Yes.
I love this question. And it's from one of my friends, Christian Williams, a very smart guy. And he talks about this. To me, he's such a volatile asset because he's probably not going to get extended by the Chargers. If he does, that's great. I don't know if he is. And if he goes somewhere else, can he be a clear wide receiver 2 anywhere else? And I think that's the value of him on the Chargers is that, he's the clear wide receiver 2. I just don't know what you're getting for him. I still don't know. Now, I did see a trade that I really liked. Mike Williams for Bryan Edwards, a 2023 first.
Okay.
That's the stuff that you're going after. If you can do that kind of stuff and get Mike Williams for that. I did see a Travis Etienne straight up for Mike Williams deal.
Okay.
I like that deal as well. Like, if you want a running back, you believe Etienne's going to come back from that with this Frank. So to me, I'm valuing him high as far as if you want to get rid of him, you need to get rid of him in the next 3 or 4 weeks because he's not going to get extended. And I don't think his market value will get as high as he is right now. And you might have to dip a little bit based on his value right now. But I still think that you trade him now if you feel like you're not contending. Now, if you're contending, you ride this thing out. To me, he's a ride me out asset. Can he win me in the playoffs?
Yes. I mean, he's 27 years old. So to get that 2023 first round pick is solid. Now, like you've been preaching, Kevin, wide receivers have a much longer shelf life than running backs. Like, they can be fantasy relevant from the time they come to the league at 23 until they're 30, even plus with some, right? So Mike Williams could have some value for the next 3 years. We just don't know where he's going to be next year. So that's a little bit scary. And plus, we haven't talked about it, but Justin Herbert has been struggling because he's faced two solid defenses back to back in a row with the Baltimore Ravens and the New England Patriots. All right, those are veteran defenses who have baffled Herbert the past 2 weeks. And then next week they face the Philadelphia Eagles. I think if you were to try to sell Mike Williams now, I don't think that you'll get fair market value based on the last 2 games. But if you wait until next week when they face the Eagles, which should be a better game for Herbert and Williams alike, and then the week after that, they face the Minnesota Vikings, who have been giving up points to everyone. So I think that the time to sell, if you're going to sell him either in redraft or in Dynasty, is probably after the Vikings game in week 10 when he probably goes off because everyone does against the Vikings. So Mike Williams is tricky. This is super tricky. I sold him right before the season started, along with Robert Woods, for AJ Brown. I wanted to get off the Mike Williams train, as you know, Kevin, because he's always dealt with injuries. Yeah. Well, he's healthy this year and he's a monster. For me, he's always a ticking time bomb, and I've said that a few times. I just don't know when he's going to get hurt again. But he has burned me a few times because he stayed healthy and he's a monster. So I would definitely wait until he goes off again to try to trade him if you're going to. But like you said, if you are a contending team with Mike Williams, ride it out and try to get that championship.
Yeah, no, I think you have to, right? And I think you just go there and you ride it out and you go, and he's a clear wide receiver too. I mean, and the Chargers
Yeah.
offense is going to figure it out, and they're competing for
Yes.
that title. So I do think that. But if this is the time to load him, if you have him, this is the time.
Right on. Okay. All right. Next question. How are you valuing Chris Evans long term? Now, for those of you who don't know, Chris Evans is the running back for the Cincinnati Bengals, but I'm sure all you Dynasty buffs are yelling at your radio being like, of course we know who Chris Evans is. So, Kevin, how are you valuing him long term?
I mean, he's okay. I as a Michigan fan, I've watched Chris Evans. I'm not valuing him as anything more than like if he's going to be relevant, it's going to be in PPR formats. And, he hasn't played the last games. We've seen that. And I don't value him very high. I'll be honest. Like, I think he's a PPR play sometimes. But he's clearly just like, I don't know. I don't want to disrespect Giovanni Bernard, but he's like Giovanni Bernard, super light Giovanni Bernard. Like, I'm not actually stepping in. Now, if he gets some run, he's fine, but he's an injury dependent back.
Yeah. I mean, isn't this the case for all backup running backs? Like, if you are a backup running back, you really don't have any fantasy value apart from an injury to the starter. So
yeah,
Chris Evans is already 24 years old. All right.
Yeah.
And he is a rookie, and he was taken in the 6th round. So it's not like the Bengals spent like high draft capital on him. Now, he has athleticism for days, but I mean, I think this is the case with any other running back. If he is as he is as valuable as any other stud RB, their backup. So Chris Evans is very valuable to the Joe Mixon manager,
Yeah.
Jeremy McNichols was very valuable to the Derrick Henry manager, and so on and so forth. Just their handcuffs, if you will, or their insurance policy. So yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, he doesn't have much value apart from an injury.
Yeah. I'm a jaded Michigan fan right now, so that's also playing my role into this a little bit.
Jaded Michigan fan, go blue. All right, so next question. Would you say Alvin Kamara for Deontay Johnson and 2 first-round picks to the currently undefeated Henry manager is a good deal? I'm hard rebuilding.
That made me laugh. I'm hard rebuilding. Would you say Kamara for Deontay Johnson, 2 first to the currently undefeated Henry owner is a good deal? I think so. Yeah, if you're going to sell for Kamara right now, if you're hard rebuilding, whatever that means, I would. If you can get 2 first and Deontay, a wide receiver 1, who I think can be, and he's putting up wide receiver 1 numbers every week. I mean, I think he's averaged 18 fantasy points every week he's played the last 7 or 6 weeks. I think I saw that stat somewhere today. I have to look at it, but he's up there. He's putting up low end wide receiver 1 numbers, and you get 2 first, and that's how. What I do when I'm rebuilding, I'm looking young wide receivers. And then I'll use the draft picks either this year or next year on running backs. And that's how I build out. And that's how I think you should build out. So you get a young wide receiver who I think he's quarterback proof. Big Ben, whoever, it's not going to be there. They'll throw whoever's in there. They're going to get a quarterback somewhere.
Sure.
So give me that Deontay Johnson 2 first. I think that's a fair deal.
Yeah.
Now, well, I was going to ask you, if you got that, if you're the Henry owner and you just lost him, but you're undefeated, I think you have to take that, right, to try to win?
Yes, 100%. I mean, you're going from Henry to another top 3 RB1 the rest of season. I mean, that is a great deal. And I assume that you'll be all right at wide receiver if you lose a Deontay Johnson. All right. Like the picks here, if you are a contending team, the draft picks are tradable. I assume that the undefeated team, it's their 2022 first round and their 2023 first round pick, which could be late, but at least you're getting that Deontay Johnson, that known commodity at 25 years old. He still has at least 5 years of prime left, and 2 first round picks who could definitely turn into something. That's definitely a fantastic trade, especially if you're hard rebuilding. Like Alvin Kamara will probably accidentally win you some games. And if you're hard rebuilding, then that's going to ruin your chances of getting like a top first pick, a top second pick, a top 3 pick, right? So if you trade Kamara, then you're almost helping your team out by getting a better draft pick in 2022.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree too. And I think that's how you're going to have to grow. And I think if you're hard rebuilding and trying to do that, I think you go after those guys. And I think that's how you kind of rebuild your teams.
Yes, absolutely. Now, this next question comes from a quote unquote friend, and that friend is me. So I will most likely have either the first or second pick in my rebuilding dynasty rookie draft next year. I am hard pressed at running back. I have quarterbacks, I have Justin Fields, I have Deshaun Watson, and I have Zach Wilson. Hopefully Zach Wilson, as long as he starts next year, he's a viable backup for me as long as Watson plays and Fields plays. Let's just say that I want to go after a running back, which I know you would not endorse, Kevin, but I have Cam Akers and J.K. Dobbins on my IR. So I could be good at RB. But if Breece Hall or Isaiah Spiller get drafted to, let's say, the Dolphins or the Falcons or any team that needs an RB, who are you drafting first, Isaiah Spiller or Breece Hall, assuming that both of those running backs go to teams that need him to be their workhorse running back?
So you're asking my rankings right now, which is good. I don't have my rankings anywhere yet. To me personally, I still have Spiller as my running back 1, and so I have Spiller. My running back 2 right now is Breece Hall. My running back 3 is Kyren Williams from Notre Dame, and Kenneth Walker is my running back 4. Even though I know Kenneth Walker is everybody's big thing right now, to me, he's still in that tier 2 below those guys. I'm a Spiller guy, so I think he's got quick feet. I know he hasn't been used a lot this year because Devin Achane is there, and they have been using him a little bit, and I actually like that. Spiller doesn't need to have to carry the load. Breece Hall has a ton of carries. So if you're looking at his usage over the last 3 seasons in Iowa State right now, he has, if you want to look at and compare these guys, he has 644 rushes already attempts. He also has 72 receptions. So when you're looking at the difference between those guys, so that's the number right there. So you have, I got to pull it up. But so Breece Hall, 644 attempts already in 3 seasons. And then if you look at Isaiah Spiller, he has 485 attempts. So he almost has 1 less season under his belt than Breece based on usage. I tend to kind of lie myself there, and I will say that Spiller's become a better receiving back out of the backfield. So I actually like Spiller a little bit more for a better dynasty asset.
I like that answer, and it also coincides with how Javonte Williams came into the NFL having to share the backfield in college with Michael Carter, which is good because now his body isn't as banged up, which is your argument for Isaiah Spiller, right?
Yeah, that's my argument, just in terms of usage. Like if you're going to split hairs here, but obviously it comes down to team, all that kind of stuff, testing and all that kind of stuff. I want to see what the testing looks like for sure. But overall, I'm a big fan of both those guys, and I do think that they both are very good. So I would still lean Spiller.
Gotcha. Perfect, man. Well, those are all the questions we have for today, unless you have any more, Kevin.
I don't have any more. I think this was a good episode. And in terms of just, hey, be ready for, there's a lot of, I will say this, I'm going to go on a little monologue and then we'll get out of here. But I do see a lot of stuff on Twitter and social media talking about, fantasy is just luck. And while I agree that there is some luck involved, it's a lot more strategy than what people, I think, get by on. You have to be very active. You have to make deals. You have to maneuver things a little bit. It's not just luck. I do know that people get hurt, and I know injuries happen. And there are some times where it's like, hey, I lost Akers, Dobbins, Thomas early in the year, and I'm still competing for spots. You hit the waiver wire hard. You try to adjust and adapt. So I will say there's a chance. And yes, it is unlucky at some points when you hit with injuries, and I understand that. But there's still more skill involved in fantasy than people want to believe.
Yes, and luck will always favor the prepared. Am I right?
Look at that. That's a teacher quote. That's like, I feel like that's a teacher quote up on the board somewhere. That is a teacher quote.
Yes.
All right. Well, good. Well, hey, we appreciate you guys as always. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, like button, and we will be back next week, same time, talking about a little bit of Dynasty and redraft football.